Get the whole Young Turks 3-hour show by going to theyoungturks.com. If you become a member, you get the whole show, plus a very fun post-game show as well. See you there. Welcome to the Young Turks. I'm your host, Cenk Uygur. As someone told me yesterday to
release the Kraken.
So I did, and he's here. Michael Shore.
The Kraken. What the hell's the Kraken?
Release the Kraken.
That's what is this going to turn into your Something
Something along those lines.
Yeah.
I'm a little jazzed about it. All right, so Michael's here. We're going to have a great show. We're going to, at some point, I believe, have an awesome heated argument. Is that?
I'm looking forward to that. Yeah, we've never had one of those, have we?
It's old school at the Young Turks.
Old Young Turks. I didn't know we were going to have an argument, so I look forward to that.
Oh, yeah. I think
we might have something else to talk about later, which is that I have flirted with the idea of voting for a Republican for the first time in forever. So I don't know if you want me to tease that or.
Oh, that's a good tease. I'm teased. I don't know who it is.
Yeah.
Okay, now I'm totally curious. Yesterday we had exploding boobs on the show. Today we have bursting boobs. Little slight distinction we will explain in the third hour of the program. Okay, and one other thing that I want. Sex involving Republicans yet again. The sex call is awesome. It's awesome. Okay.
It's great. You can make you didn't know Republicans had sex jokes all you want, but then, of course, they keep reproducing, so there's confirmation of it out there. But you didn't know they had this kind of sex, so that's pretty great.
Don't it? Okay. So, now, before the disagreement that I think we're going to have with Michael is on another part of the Obama administration that I am livid about. Livid. Okay. So, more Obama hate coming from me. So, all of you that think I'm a secret Republican, get ready.
Maybe I'm the secret Republican.
Oh, yeah, we'll see. There's a lot of, you never know, man. There's a lot of spies going around here. Sleeper cells. All right, so now, but we are going to start with good news about Obama and giving Obama credit. Yesterday he came out and said, yeah, sure, let's do more offshore drilling. That sounds like a great idea. And as usual, I was not happy about that. Not because I hate offshore drilling and think it's the worst idea ever, not because the energy issue is my top issue, and not even because I wouldn't have done that deal. I might have done that deal, but I certainly wouldn't have done it before negotiations began. And I thought it was just a terrible way to start by giving away the Queen in the beginning of the discussion.
We agree 110% on this. I mean, it was a huge mistake, and also it's philosophically, do I know everything about the fossil fuel business and all of that? I just know that people are being rewarded who shouldn't yet be rewarded, and that is, in a nutshell, I think was a huge mistake by the administration. But it seems that maybe he was playing one hand, setting himself up for another hand that he's playing today in some way.
And that's surely the case. But he's playing against himself as usual, if you ask me. But anyway, let's get to the good news. The good news is the second hand came in today, and it's really good. So what he's going to do is increase the fuel efficiency standards for cars in America to an average of 35.5 miles per gallon within 6 years. Okay. Now, those are numbers you might not be familiar with, but let me just tell you what the results are. First of all, the bad news is that it's going to raise the prices of cars. And they're very upfront about it, and they just say it right off the bat. Look, by 2012, each vehicle will have about $434 more. Will cost $430. Now, that's pretty significant. And then by 2016, they'll cost $926 more. So you're saying, all right, where's the good news, right? Well, there is. The reason is over the life expectancy of an average vehicle, because of the better gas mileage they're going to get, you're going to save $3,000. See, this is short-term pain for long-term gain, and it's very smart. It helps the environment. It helps, our pocketbooks in the long run. Now, it needs a little bit of political courage to be able to take the short-term pain. So it's really nicely done, if you ask me.
I agree. One of the issues that they haven't really explored, especially in this sort of time of financial uncertainty, is what you're asking for by virtue of the fact that you're raising the prices of cars is that you're asking lending institutions who do car loans and the financial arms of the automakers to lend more money. So it does create more debt at a time when we are trying to reduce debt across the board or to have responsible debt. I understand. I think it's a fantastic step in the right direction. These fuel efficiency standards, at one time, were not going to change until 2030. Then were rolled back to, I think, was it 2022 or something? Well, I don't know. But they've accelerated, to use an auto pun, that change. And I think it's great. And I think it's a step in the right direction. And, you know, there are always reasons in these cases to be somewhat suspicious because of the fact that why can the president just sort of control the price of cars and the price of gasoline? And it's not as simple as that. But I heard somebody talking about that on the radio today, actually. So, why can't they change that now if he can do it in one broad sweep? But it's not. It's what Cenk just told you, which is the consumption is going to go down. So the amount of money you spend on it is going to go down.
So let's talk briefly about winners and losers, right? So this is not pain-free, as we told you, and it's not that there are no losers. Michael mentioned one, the lenders have to give out more money. The other people that are losers in this are the dealerships, because they're like, look, you know, however much Joe down the street saves on gas in the next 10 years is irrelevant to me. You're making the price of cars higher, which makes it harder to sell, and so that hurts dealerships. So they're not happy about this. The other people, of course, who are not happy about this are oil companies, who are like, oh, okay, so the average guy actually winds up saving a lot of money, but why does he save the money? Because he's buying less gas. So, of course, all the people that are involved in oil are not happy about it. So there is definitely some political courage in taking on all those guys, including the oil companies, which, of course, are very significant in lobbying, et cetera.
But they've also lowered the amount of money they're going to be spending on healthcare if you own a dealership and if you own an oil company. So, I mean, at the end of the day, these are necessary expenses for most of America. If you have a car, you have to buy gas for it, and if you live in a place where you need a car, you need a car. It's not quite as simple as that, but I think that a lot of these are. And I'm not even saying scare tactics, but they're alarmist on the parts of the auto companies and the car dealerships and whatever unions, whatever sort of professional unions they have, not labor unions. So I think that people are probably just going to take a breath and look at this. And of course, like anything, there's going to be somebody who's opposed to it. And in this case, there'll be a lot of people, a lot of powerful people as well.
I also want to get to another great piece of this. You know, like every once in a while, it'd be a good story, but I'll find the depressing angle, right? And but you didn't see this, and the devil's in the details. Well, there's actually good things in the details here. I'm going to get to that in a second. First, JR.
Should we be actually this outraged by the price of cars going up, first $500 then about $1,000?
About, yeah.
Over several years, a few years. Mm-hmm. In 1955, cars were $2,000. They didn't have ABS, they didn't have air conditioning, they didn't have all this crazy stuff. You put more things on cars, they cost more. Everything goes up. The price of cars, nobody would imagine you're going to pay $80,000 for a car and somebody's head isn't going to explode when cars were actually pretty big in the 50s and then people were buying them. So when you put something on a car, you're going to pay for it. Now we got navigation system. You don't have to have it, but you have to have certain tires. You have to have certain this. That's what happens.
And, and I'm really glad JR said that, because you get historical perspective here is enormously important. The automakers historically have squealed whenever you ask them to do anything that made sense. Like when Ralph Nader, among others, argued we should put seatbelts in cars. People are like, oh, seatbelts! Oh, that's going to cost so much. That's going to raise the price of cars. And you know what? It did, a little bit. And you know what else it did? It saved probably by this time maybe millions of lives.
Yeah. No, okay. But the other part of what JR is talking about is that that things do go up in price. I mean, that is what happens. The price of a car is also a negotiable item, as we all know. The price of gas is not a negotiable item. You can't go say, all right, $3.35 a gallon. I'll give you $3.10 and that's my final offer, and you walk away, and he'll let you walk away. With a car, it's a little bit different. So there is, I mean, when you're talking about hundreds of dollars here, there's a little play, I'm sure, in those numbers. But it's really true. I mean, the price of things go up because they are better and they are safer and they have more gadgets, and you, of course, can customize them in certain cases. It's going to be tough if you play the prices right, because if you're going to be guessing the price of a car, that's going to change everything. It's going to totally throw that equation out the window.
Michael Shore, come on down!
Release the Kraken!
All right. By the way, I'm the kind of guy. I'm kidding around, but I'll go to a store and at grocery store, and they'll say like $75.34. if I went shopping for like 2 months. Anyway, and right, and I'll be like, all right, that's cool. I'll give you $70. And the cash register lady will be like, oh, all right, fine, you win. 72, that's my final offer. Okay, they're like, I don't think we can do that here, sir.
Right. Have you ever had anybody bend, ever?
No. Not at the big places. But you'll be surprised. Sometimes, like, you didn't think you could negotiate
I had an uncle who would haggle everything. I mean, not in a grocery store, but he'd go buy a shirt and pants, and it would come out to $100. He'd say, "I'll give you 90."
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I do that all the time.
Do you?
Yeah, of course.
At like a clothing store?
No, not at Macy's. I know I can't do it at Macy's. But what I'll do at Macy's is I'll say, okay, look, so this is your theoretical price. What's your real price? Okay, the reason I asked that goofy question is because, and they're like, well, okay, I guess if you did this, and you know what? Oh, every other Tuesday, you're right. I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah.
You 12% off, and I'm like, see, I knew there was a real price.
Yeah.
So by the way, who's
smart.
cheaper, your uncle or me?
Because
His uncle was notoriously cheap.
per capita, my uncle. But I don't find you cheap, actually.
Oh,
So
really?
yeah, I don't find you cheap. I mean, but I don't work for you, really. So.
Yeah, then you'd have a different perspective.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Look, two more things on this is important. One is devil's in the details. Very good details on this. Obama used the EPA to do this. Now, remember before I was saying, why don't you just use the powers that you have? Why don't you use the EPA to do the regulation that the Supreme Court, right-wing Supreme Court, said they could do? Right? What are you waiting on? If you really want to get it done, just do it, right? And in this case, he did it, and he used the EPA, and it perfectly within his rights. And I honestly, I don't even hear the Republicans squealing that much.
No, they're not. I mean, because of the fact that their palms were softened yesterday by what he did yesterday.
I don't think so.
I mean, it has to play into it a little bit. I mean, you don't think so at all? You just think that they're two different issues? They're not, because they're tied together in one way.
No, because it's not that they're different issues.
They're not.
It's just that the Republicans don't give a damn about any concession. So if you give them 90% of what they want, and then the next day say, all right, now I'm going to take 5% back, they're like, what are you doing?
Release the Kraken.
Right?
It could be also that they're, in an election year. We probably overthink the terms in an election year. But to go back and say that you're supporting things that are going to bring down the price of fuel is much sexier in an election year.
I hear you, but here's my thoughts on it. Look, because one, I think we're going to see more of it. As the car prices go up, I think then the Republicans will go on the attack, okay? Because they play short-term ball, right? They're not going to tell you, of course, about the gas prices, right. Your gas bills going down. And then number two, the car companies are in favor of it, which is totally reverse of what historically has been the case.
It's because the car companies are the United
States.
States.
Owned by the government, right, exactly. And so, and Ford isn't, but they're on board. And of course, Japanese car companies aren't owned by the United States government, but everybody's on board. So that kind of takes away the ability of the Republicans to say, oh, you're hurting the car companies. Yeah. Oh, you're going to cost jobs, et cetera. They'll probably rally to that behind the dealers, the car dealerships, right? But it's hard, because what are they going to say? The guys that are hurt the most are the oil companies. I mean, the Republicans would come out and be like, oh, my God, you're hurting the oil companies because Americans have to pay less for gas. Right? Okay. No, that's a really tough argument. I don't even think the Republicans can make that argument. And then finally, I was going to say something else about the Republicans, but apparently that is finally.
I bet you're going to come up with something else to say about the Republicans.
So anyway, Obama takes the fight to them in this regard, and by the end of the 2 days, first day we didn't like what happened, second day we do like what happened. If Obama got to decide energy policy all by himself, and he didn't have to pass legislation, and he didn't have to yet have that go through the Senate, et cetera, right? Then the final product, if he said, look, I'm a moderate, and this is my final product. We're going to do some offshore drilling. Okay, we're going to do some nuclear energy, but we're not going to do all offshore drilling, as the Republicans wanted, and we're going to raise the fuel efficiency standards. I'd say, let's shake on it. Okay, it's not... Yeah. I don't think it's... I'm sure environmentalists would disagree with me, and they were livid yesterday over the substance of the policy. But for my purposes, it's not a bad deal. The problem is we're not at that point we're at the beginning of those negotiations.
You're right, but what you are seeing, and you've seen now for a little while, is a president, I think, who has listened to some criticism. And you said it, Obama decide. I mean, just to see this president be decisive now for a consistent period of time, let's call it a month, but whatever it is, with healthcare, finally with healthcare, with the offshore drilling, and with these CAFE standards and all of that, the fuel efficiency. He's coming out, he's saying this is what it is, and he's sort of not caring about who he's talking to about it. And I think that is the sign of a growing president, and I think that it's going to serve him well. And whatever, there's a lot of curveballs that he's going to get on all of this, but I do think that is something that a lot of people wanted to see him from his administration and from him specifically. And we're seeing that.
All right, so I remember now my final point on the Republicans. Look, this is why no matter what people tell you, and no matter how frustrated I get with the Democratic Party or I get with Obama, of course it matters whether you vote for Democrats or Republicans, okay? Because if we had a Republican president, it is inconceivable that they would have done this. Because we know they didn't.
Because they haven't. And you saw Christy Todd Whitman. It was one of her great frustrations as a Republican EPA administrator in the Bush administration, wanting to do something and just getting pushed back at every turn.
So as much as, I'm not a Naderite. As much as I get frustrated with the Democrats, and I think that the senators should get primaries if they continue, if they just, all they do is sell out to corporations in one bill after another, absolutely. You should do everything you can to try to push the Democratic Party to the left or replace the current members of the Democratic Party. But it's foolish to say, oh, it doesn't matter if Democrats or Republicans win. Even me, who's so mad at the Democratic Party, I wouldn't say that certainly at this point, because it does matter. It matters in things like this, where you get much better fuel efficiency standards, where we're all going to save a lot more money, where it's much better for the environment. The Republicans, I'm positive because of past experience, the Republicans would not have done it and are opposed to it. And it's not just that. It's, as I said before, one of when people ask me, what do you like about Obama? One of the most important things is the cabinet members and the different regulatory bodies that he fills. Now, some on the financial side, I think he's filled the regulatory bodies in very destructive ways. It's a mixed bag for me in that regard. But outside of that, the EPA, the Interior Department, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, they were all those positions were given to lobbyists under Bush. And they would have been given to industry lobbyists under McCain. And in this case, they were given to people who care about the issues, anything from the Department of Education to the EPA.
It's also what's important
to you, though. Huge difference.
But with the Interior and let's go to the Interior because you mentioned the Interior. There are a lot of people that are, up in arms about the fact that there was a caving in to the oil companies that want to drill offshore, that want to go to the North Slope of Alaska and drill. So a lot of people are also, who were fine with the finance because it's their interest, are furious at the Interior Department, at Ken Salazar, for caving to them.
Yeah, and look, again, it's look at the whole picture, okay? Because you can't. These are not black and white issues. I think Salazar is actually among the worst Democrats, if you ask me. He's been consistently conservative, consistently corporatist, okay? Now, is he better than what McCain would have put in at Interior?
Well, of course he is.
Oh,
yeah.
come on. It would be disingenuous to claim anything else, okay? So now, would I prefer that, or should we push Obama to get someone even better than Salazar? Absolutely. All right, but the good news today on this front from Obama.
Absolutely.
All right, later, don't worry if you're used to me bashing this administration. That's coming. It's definitely coming. That's about, of course, the Treasury Department. All right, we'll be right back. Back on the Young Turks, Cenk and Michael with you. Michael just lost his mic. So go ahead and grab that. Now, I hopefully we'll have time for Obama mocking the press corps in this segment, because I definitely want to do that as well. But first, we're going to start with a funny little story of the Republicans and their sex lines. Now, the Republicans have been having plenty of trouble with sex already, because, of course, the RNC paid nearly $2,000 at Voyeur, a nightclub in West Hollywood with a bondage and topless lesbian theme. And already the Family Research Council says you should stop giving your money to the RNC. So they're already in a lot of trouble over this, and they didn't need any more trouble, but they just got it because the Republican National Committee accidentally sent a fundraising mail piece with the wrong phone number on it. and instead of calling the RNC, they directed you to a sex line, which is disastrous, okay, for them. See, for the regular people, it's an honest mistake. Who cares, right? They put in 800 instead of 202, because 202 is the Washington number, right? And they put in 800, and once you go to that number, it says, oh, go to this other number, and you go to the other number, and
then you
says,
hear it.
Yeah. All right, now, so what we did was we went to that number, and we recorded what all those Republicans heard when they got their fundraising mail, and what got them all worked up and apparently bothered. Let's listen.
Hey there, sexy guy. Welcome to an exciting new way to go live one-on-one with hot, horny girls waiting right now to talk to you. Lie back, baby. Relax and get ready to meet real local students, housewives, and working girls from all over the country. Hundreds of hot girls call free all day and night because we love nasty talk as much as you do. Hot amateur talk and voice personals for just $1.99 per minute. Or live one-on-one talk with a nasty girl who'll do anything you want for just $3.99 per minute. This service is brought to you by Intimate Encounters. You must be over 18. Enter your credit card now to join the fun. Or try Collect Callback. Dial 1-215-SEX-TALK and we'll call you right back, connecting you to hot live talk with horny students, housewives, and working girls. Now it's time to stick it in. Enter your Visa, MasterCard, Discover, or American Express now, followed by the pound key. Ooh, we're getting closer, lover. Press 8 to hear about our hot, new, exciting offer. Sorry, baby, I did not understand your response.
You know, and this whole time, I thought it was pronounced Boehner.
It turns out it is indeed boner if they called that line.
It's couldn't be more perfect.
No. What I would love, and there's no way of tracking this is my guess. Only those lines themselves can track it. But what I would love is how many Republicans actually did it.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? They called, they're like, oh, this is not the right place to give donations to the RNC. On the other hand, it is the right place for naughty schoolgirls and housewives and other working girls. And actually, I bet they had an absolute boon in business.
And then, subsequently, then they called back. Like, hey, I mistakenly called you earlier. It's great.
Right. And the other things that I loved about that is apparently guys like students, housewives, and other working girls.
Working girls, yeah. It covers everybody. Students, housewives, and working girls.
I think working girls are like secretaries, nurses. It covers the whole range of fetishes.
Layabouts aren't covered. It's like I'm looking for just someone who's not really doing anything today.
And the other funny thing is like housewives, right? But not your housewife. Somebody else's housewife. Like, there's never going to be a sex line for, get dirty talk from your own wife. Like, she's your wife, and she's dirty. Right?
But as soon as she's married to somebody else, all of a sudden...
You're like, whoa, hey, hot housewife, how you doing? And that was one of the first porns I ever watched.
Was Hot Housewives?
Close. Horny Asian Housewives.
Really? And you know what? You set me up in front of an open goal right there, and I'm not even going to take the shot.
I think it's called a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yes, okay, thank you. I didn't say it.
All right, and then finally, apparently, they don't want professionals talking dirty to them. They want amateurs.
Right.
Did you notice?
Yeah, of course.
That little amateur. Like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm new to this. I'm a student. Right? And then the Republicans are like, oh, yeah. Now, by the way, this phone line is not set up for Republicans. They just gave the wrong number. I want to be fair. Although now more Republicans will be using it.
No, it couldn't be better. I mean, first they're saying don't give to the RNC, and then the RNC trying to pick things back up again, and this could be their biggest fundraising effort yet. So.
Except they're raising funds for the wrong people.
Right. I want to write a check.
Yeah, something like that. Or call back, collect, 215, all right.
Yeah. Hot sex, was it?
Sex talk, something.
I wrote it down, obviously.
We'll go back and watch it again. All right. Now, on the next topic, Obama is taking on critics of the health care bill. And
that was the worst segue ever.
Well, there was no segue.
There's no
segue.
How do you get from one place to the other?
Normally I try. Normally I'm like, speaking of, but I had nothing there.
Okay, 1215 Hot Sex, and now we're on to Obama, the healthcare bill.
So Obama is doing a spirited defense of his healthcare bill, and he's going to mock the right wing and the press, etc., in this speech, and the crowd's going to eat it up. So let's share it with you. Clip number 9.
Now, over the last year, there's been a lot of misinformation spread about health reform. There's been a lot of fear-mongering, a lot of overheated rhetoric. You turned on the news, you'd see that those same folks who were hollering about it before are still hollering about how the world will end because we passed this bill. This is not an exaggeration. All right? John Boehner called the passage of this bill. We don't need to boo. I just want to give the facts. Called this passage of this bill Armageddon. You had others who said this is the end of freedom as we know it. So after I signed the bill, I looked around. I looked up at the sky to see if asteroids were coming. I looked at the ground to see if cracks had opened up in the earth. You know what? It turned out it was a pretty nice day. Birds were still chirping. Folks were strolling down the street. Nobody had lost their doctor. Nobody had pulled the plug on Granny. Nobody was being dragged away to be forced into some government-run health care plan. But the thing is, though, you have to love some of the pundits in Washington. Every single day since I signed the reform law, there's been another poll or headline said, "Nation still divided on health care reform." Polls haven't changed yet. Well, yeah. It just last week. It's only been a week. Can you imagine if some of these reporters were working on a farm and you planted some seeds and they came out next day and they looked and nothing's happened. There's no crop. We're going to starve. Oh, no. It's a disaster. It's been a week, folks. So before we find out if people like health care reform, we should wait to see what happens when we actually put it into place. Just a thought.
All right, that was as good as I've seen Obama.
No, it's the candidate became the president right there, and that's what you're looking at. I mean, everything that's what America voted for, and that's what we haven't seen, and that's better than he even was on the campaign trail.
And that's certainly the funniest I've ever seen.
Yeah, and the most relaxed and the most. I think this victory gave him, and I hate this term because I've never known really what it means, but sometimes you just have to say mojo. And it gave it to him because he has this intangible now, and I think it has informed the way he behaved yesterday, bringing bad news to his own party, today bringing good news to his country. I sort of think that there's been a change in the way he is.
And it was more aggressive, too. Like the Obama of the past would have been more reluctant, I think. I could be wrong, but that's certainly what I saw and experienced in the first year. Would have been more reluctant to go after the press in that way, in that mocking tone, and more reluctant to go after Republicans. And he was batting them back and forth. And so that was refreshing, and it was good to see. And the crowd response was overwhelming. We cut out like 30 seconds of applause from that because we just had to get it going.
Yeah.
But every line had this great applause. Now, since my new role is a bit of a Debbie Downer, although we've done nearly an hour giving Obama credit so far, in in this show.
It doesn't have to be equal time, by the way. I mean, there are times you can be down on the president. There are days where you can just be up on him the entire day.
Absolutely. But, Michael, you weren't on the show as this thing passed and et cetera.
Right.
So just real quick.
I noticed that, by the way.
in this very short time that we have. So, look, one of the critics of his healthcare plan is me. One of the reasons I criticize it is because he gave away the public option for apparently no reason. But am I seeing that wrong? I mean, he didn't get any Republican votes, and he didn't get the healthcare insurance industry obviously behind him. So why did he give it away?
Well, I think because, there are a few reasons why he gave it away. One, I loved hearing John McCain in the wake of the passage of healthcare say, well, he's going to get no cooperation now from the Republican Party. Oh, really? Wow, now we got to really change the way things are done. But truthfully, I was with you. I mean, it's the issue. Public option and single payer was something that I was adamant about going into this, and I almost thought we should vote it down in a sort of extreme Kucinich-like way. But I came to hear and see a few things. One is that incremental change is better than no change at all, because with incremental change, there are ways to see this grow and ways to see its efficacy, and then bring people over to your side. That's a little pie in the sky, but it's something I had to buy into. The other part of it was he needed to pass this to save his presidency. And in a big picture, yes, it was giving away too much. The perceptions are different than what we know the intricacies of this bill are. But I do think that there was this sort of overarching feeling that this president had to, for the moment, save his presidency. And by passing this legislation, by having a victory, now you're getting to see this. Now you're getting to see a president out on the stump, basically, popular, making people laugh. This is a relaxed man. We can read too much into all of that. But the point is, it gave stamina to his flagging presidency. And I think he needed that in an election year, and I think he needed it with his job.
Right. Now, of course, he'd given away the public option before all of that really came to pass.
Well,
but, as you were talking, Michael, I mean, I think the real reason he gave it away, I mean, all those things you said are perfectly valid, and I get that, he needed the conservative Democrats to sign it. I don't think the conservative he would have lost, and conservative corporatists, whatever you want to call them, Democrats.
But that's what I mean. That's encompassed in what I'm saying. I mean, that should be implicit. But the other thing is he passed some health care reform, and people with pre-existing conditions are going to get covered, and children are going to get covered, and these things are so. It is better than it was the day he got there, and I think that is, with an exclamation point. And I think that's what we have to remember. People who were not happy not having the single payer, not happy having the public option. I think those people have to remember that it is much better than it was before Barack Obama was president.
All right, I just want to get your perspective on that. Now, when we come back in the next hour, Congressman Steve Cohen is going to join us. And we are also going to do Bill Donahue again calling homosexuals pedophiles in more creative and ingenious ways. And but most importantly, when we come back in the next segment, I'm going to go after Tim Geithner with All I Got. Okay, so that should be interesting. We'll see Michael's response to that. Young Turks. All right, back on the Young Turks. Cenk Uygur, Michael Schur with you. J.R. Jackson is producing. The legendary first ever internet TV director to Steven Spielberg of Web TV. Jesus Godoy is directing. Now, let's get it on. It's time to, you know it, say it with me.
Release the Kraken.
Okay, so.
Can you tell us what the Kraken is?
That's a good question. It's, of course, from Clash of the Titans, so coming out. That's Liam Neeson.
Right.
I already saw it because we're going to review it on Friday at 5 o'clock Eastern on theyoungturks.com. And the Kraken is Hades' main tool. So Hades is the brother of Zeus. Of course, he rules the underground.
Right. Oh, so Hades, Hades.
That's right.
I thought you were like Hades, like HAITI''S, main tool.
Right, the main tool of Hades. They could have used it earlier.
They could have used some Kraken. Yeah.
Okay, well, I don't want to get.
So it's
so just real quick because you asked. In the movie, man is rebelling against the gods, and Zeus needs the help of his brother Hades. And if Hades is going to unleash his hell upon the people, he's going to use his main tool,
which is the Kraken.
The Kraken, which is this giant monster that comes and eats everything.
Asked and answered.
All right. So now you know. Now, in political terms, the Kraken is Tim Geithner. Okay. Tim Geithner is having an interview with Matt Lauer on the Today Show. They're going to talk about unemployment, financial reform, etc. And he is going to drive me absolutely crazy, as he always does. This guy, every time I listen to him, it nails on a chalkboard. Okay. And so first, we got it broken down in many pieces for you. First, they're going to talk about the unemployment rate. Let's go to clip number 3.
Everybody wants to talk about jobs, and the numbers are coming out on Friday. Right now, 9.7%. That's where it stands, and it's been stubborn. Do you see any real sign that there's going to be progress in the unemployment number?
Well, I think the key thing that's going to happen is the economy is going to start creating jobs again. You're going to start to see businesses across the country start to add to payroll again. That's going to come. The economy is growing now. That's the first step. But with growth, more jobs will come. But the unemployment rate is still terribly high, and it's going to stay unacceptably high for a long period of time. It's going to take a long time to bring it down just because of the damage caused by the recession.
All right. Now, he says it's going to remain high for a while. He's setting expectations. That's true. And he says it's because damage caused by the recession.
This isn't breaking news either. I mean,
No.
they've maintained this for quite a while, and having a low bar is always
And that's a good thing, because they made the mistake initially of saying that unemployment is going to be around 8% when they first got in.
Right.
And that was way too low, and everybody was saying it, especially progressives. Paul Krugman at the New York Times was saying, what do you say? Don't say that. Don't say that. It's going to go much higher than that. And after that initial mistake, they've been saying this ever since. Now, if you ask me, Geithner didn't focus on jobs nearly enough from the beginning, and that's part of the reason that it's high. Now, 98% of the reason it's high is because of the economic recession, also partly caused by Tim Geithner. Okay, but it's not my main beef with him. We're just warming it. Okay, so now let's go to clip number 4.
If you want me to defend Geithner here, which you apparently do because you're like trying to pick a fight with me today.
No,
Okay.
I want me. What do you mean?
I'm just saying that he did nothing offensive with that answer. So far,
Okay,
it's
no.
an even fight.
So far, no problem. Okay. The next one is he's going to talk about the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression, and then we're going to get into it. Clip number 4.
You took some heat on Capitol Hill recently. An Ohio Democratic representative looked at you and said, I don't think you're talking enough about jobs, and that's what my people, my constituents want in my community. When you say that the economy is going to start to create jobs, why hasn't it created jobs to this point?
Just because this was the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression. Huge amount of damage done to businesses, families across the country. And we're going to be living with that damage for some time. It's just going to take us a while to heal that damage. But look at what the president did. He came in and did the largest, most forceful package of support for the economy we had considered doing in 50 years. And he moved very aggressively to fix what was broken.
All right, untrue. Now, couple of things here.
Okay.
Number one, he says it as if it was inevitable. Well, we had this terrible economic recession, and so we had to react to it. But what he leaves out, and what I'm more angry at Matt Lauer for, because he lets him leave it out, is that he helped to cause it, right? So why didn't Matt Lauer ask him, hey, you know what? Weren't you partly responsible? You were one of the top regulators in the country at the New York Fed, and it was your job to make sure that these financial companies did not collapse, and you let them collapse. I mean, you say it as if you're an innocent bystander. And Lauer never asked that question in the interview, and drove me crazy about it. And so he lets Geithner get away with, like, oh, shucks, we were helpless, dealt this hand, what could we do?
I don't disagree with Geithner's hand in this, but he's being asked about the recession. He inherited whomever he inherited it from. He inherited a recession, and he did have a president behaving, aggressively from the outset in response.
And that's what I disagree with.
Recession.
Okay, so let's start with the disagreement. First of all, what would have been aggressive is, hey, banks, now you're all bankrupt. You're at my mercy. Okay, if you'd like me to bail you out, here are your new rules. Okay, here are the new regulations. I'm not going to let you do a highly leveraged, highly risky, highly secret credit default swaps that endangers the health of our economy. If you want the money and you want to survive, you're going to play by these new rules so you don't screw up again. That would have been fairly aggressive. Instead, we're a year and a half later, almost 2 years later now, and we still don't have any reform. That is not aggressive. That's pathetic.
Okay, that is true, but in light of the timing and context of when he was forced to address this, when his administration was forced to address this. It's a trauma victim in a car accident who lives, his leg works, but he's got a little bit of a limp. I mean, yes, they didn't fix it exactly right. They didn't do all the things that were required, and they still haven't. But the point is, they responded to a recession in an emergent way, and they did some imperfect things, but they also stemmed the tide of recession. And they did it in a willy-nilly way in places, and there are flaws in every single, almost every single part of the way they addressed it. However, they did address it, and they did stop the bleeding, as it were, just to keep pushing that. But I disagree that expecting perfection out of this is completely different than saying, okay, we turned the tide, but we have to make some wholesale changes that we have not yet made. We have to change the rules of the game.
I'm going to expand upon your analogy. It's like they stitched up the patient, and so they stopped the external bleeding, and then you look at it, and I criticize them, and people say, well, oh, you're worried about how they did the stitches, but they stopped the bleeding. No, I'm not criticizing them for the stitches. I'm criticizing them because they didn't check for internal bleeding, and the patient definitely has internal bleeding and will die soon. Okay, I'm apocalyptic about this. I believe that since there has been, if you will, since there has been no real reform, it is a near guarantee that we will have a gigantic financial collapse. I'm not saying tomorrow. I'm not even saying a year from now. If you force me to give you a time frame, of course I don't really know, but I would guess about a year and a half to 3 years. This thing is going to crater in on itself. And look, the part they were aggressive about, I don't want, again, it's not black and white, is that they were aggressive about the stimulus spending. That was good. That was generally right. And the
auto companies,
et cetera. I mean, they tried on the things that did not involve actually taking on the bankers. When it came to spending money, which no one objects to in the real world, okay, the Republicans pretend to object to it, et cetera, which is easy. It's always easier to spend money. They did a pretty good job, right? And some people will say, no, that stimulus spending was not enough. I'm not in that camp. He did the best he could on that, okay? The real problem is, of course, in reform. Now, so that we're going to get to the heart of that issue in the next clip.
And my feeling about that, just because you were able to say it, is that, and I am a layperson on economic issues, but I listen to and I read quite a bit about them and read the broad spectrum. My feeling is that you might be right, but I feel like reform is more imminent than is collapse, and I feel from what I have read and what I've been able to glean from the dialogue, that's what it feels like to me.
Right. The current reform is pathetic, and even the strongest version of the current reform will not do the job. So there would have to be a second round of reform, and there's no way they're going to have a second round of reform before the collapse. Not no way. That's way too strong. Yeah. But I'd be really surprised. So now let's go to the heart of the matter. Clip number 5 here, where Geithner is going to tell us this is all deeply unfair and drive me crazy.
Here's what you said to the New Yorker magazine. You said, quote, "My basic view is that we did a pretty successful job of putting out a severe financial crisis and avoiding a Great Depression. We saved the economy, but we kind of lost the public doing it." What do you mean you lost the public?
Because as the president said, and he said this many times, we had to do some very unpopular things. People looked at what had happened. They saw people in the financial community having made terrible mistakes that caused millions of lost jobs, millions of lost homes. But to help them, to protect them from the damage, we had to come in and do things that were going to help those banks, help those companies. But if we hadn't done that, Matt, if we hadn't done it, you would have seen millions more jobs lost and hundreds of thousands of more companies having to shut their doors. And that is the basic sense of unfairness which is driving so much anger and frustration across the country.
Yeah.
But again,
and you understand that anger and frustration.
Absolutely.
When someone's out there and they haven't gotten a job that they lost 2 years ago, and they get the feeling that business on Wall Street has returned to normal, and the executives are getting big bonuses again, and they still can't pay for their mortgage or they're underwater, they say, where's the fairness in this?
And it's not fair. It's deeply unfair, and they should be angry about it. But again, what was the choice the president had to make? He had to decide whether he was going to act to fix it or stand back because it might be more popular not to have to do that kind of stuff, and that would have been calamitous for the American economy. Much, much worse than what we went through already.
This is part and parcel of why I can't stand Tim Geithner and why I can't stand the media, okay? Look, he keeps talking about how it's deeply unfair, as if he had nothing to do with it. he was as critical a player in the Bush administration and the Obama administration in making those decisions as you could have. I mean, Hank Paulson, Ben Bernanke, Tim Geithner. I mean, he was part and parcel of making those deeply unfair decisions. Now, he says it as if he had nothing to do with it, and Lauer lets him get away with it.
I disagree with you. I think he's acknowledging that it was unfair. I think he's saying that we did it knowing that it was going to be perceived as unfair, but it was the only place we had to go, and it's hard to sell.
That gets to point number 2, which is the constant straw man that he sets up and that the press lets them get away with. We only had 2 choices, which is a colossal depression, or we give all the money to the bankers. Well, look, that's a straw man. Those weren't your only 2 choices. How about the choice of, hey, you know what? We got to rescue the financial industry, and maybe we even have to rescue these banks. But Simon Johnson, former chief economist of the IMF, says, look, there were 13 bankers that came in the room. You should have fired at least 12 of those guys. Jamie Dimon and JP Morgan might be an exception, okay, because they didn't deal in the credit default swaps as much, et cetera. And you're not blindly firing people. You're firing people because they screwed up the global economy and they're doing a bad job, and you need to find somebody new. Or, for example, AIG. You didn't need to do backdoor bailouts of Goldman Sachs, paying off 100% on a ridiculous bet against AIG. You didn't have to do all of that, but Tim Geithner made those decisions, pushed for those decisions, and those were the ones that wound up being deeply unfair and deeply unnecessary. And that's what he doesn't get challenged on, and that's what he's definitely wrong about.
I think that if you, and again, I'm just going to say that I don't have any bona fides about this because I'm not an economist, and I didn't certainly know how the rescue should have gone. But I do think that there are many reasonable economists and commentators on the economy who disagree with you on this and think that, yes, that not to the point that it was perfectly executed, but to the point that you could just sort of go pick and choose and do in the situation they were in, which bankers go here, is this worse than the other? It's unfair that Bear Stearns closed down, but Lehman did and Bear Stearns didn't and Goldman Sachs didn't. I mean, there was a lot of unfairness here, but the big picture, the broad stroke that they were trying to make was to get the economy going again.
Right. And the big picture, they totally failed at. Because why do we have the unemployment? And why did this economic collapse lead to unemployment? One of the reasons, of course, is instability. And they were trying to stabilize things. To be fair to them, that they were trying to address.
Absolutely,
okay.
But that's
right.
not just a little one of the things is instability. But there was great instability, and they stabilized the markets.
All right. Now, but the second reason we have that is because the banks stopped lending. And so then that meant the companies didn't have new source of money. That means they had to lay people off. Okay, that was a huge part of it. And Tim Geithner gave the money to the banks unquestioningly and did not require them to lend it. And so they just sat on it. And in fact, they didn't just sit on it. They took it home in bonuses. Now, at the very least, that's a colossal you should be fired kind of error. I mean, you partly caused that unemployment by giving away the money, no strings attached.
And at the very least, we invested in these banks who are paying us back, and we're making money off of it too. The government's, with Citibank paying.
But again, that's a fair point. Except it's the tip of the iceberg. Okay, so we gave TARP money, and they're giving the TARP money back with interest. Okay, so that's the good part.
With major interest, by the way.
But what you're not talking about is the iceberg, where we gave them 0% interest rate. Then they turn around, as Lauer's about to explain, and charge 26% interest rate in credit cards, as an example. And then they make deals. They get the backdoor bailouts, which, of course, Geithner never talks about.
And it wasn't, I mean, I cannot argue and won't argue because it's despicable, but the foresight that went into this lending was atrocious. But it was done in such an emergent way that I don't know.
But Michael, shouldn't they have been prepared for that? I mean, look, maybe you say,
look, it happened during the transition that they put this idea together.
No. I don't mean Obama necessarily, and I don't mean you and me like, oh, we should have, when an economic collapse happens, Michael sure should know what he's doing, right?
Yeah.
No, but if anybody was going to know what they were doing, shouldn't it be Ben Bernanke and Tim Geithner?
Absolutely.
And they didn't. They had no plan for it because. I mean, and how did they not see it coming? That's another thing. It's not like they weren't warned in 100 different ways.
Right, but there was no precedent to this in their lives either. I mean, even, let's just say they're the two most expert men in the world, people in the world at economy, at which no one is saying, but let's say they're among the top. There's no real way to prepare for the unprecedented, but they made some bad decisions, certainly, by not covering all the bases going in. And I guess I'm more forgiving of it because it seemed to happen so quickly, and mistakes were bound to be made. And yes, I'm suspicious of corporate America, and I'm suspicious of the banks constantly, and they behaved in a lecherous way, and that's what got them to where they were. But I also think that, and I guess where we disagree is I think that is not a fait accompli. I don't think that's gonna stay that way forever.
Why did we put the guy who didn't regulate them in the first place? Why did we promote him? It doesn't make any sense. All right, let's do clip number 6, where he's going to talk about what they're going to do next. Okay, good. Let's see what they're going to do next. Clip number 6.
So you're saying the president made the right choices to stop the bleeding at the time. Now some are worried that the right choices are not being made to prevent the problem from happening again. When they look at financial reform that's working through the Senate right now, they say that one of the major components that's missing in this, Secretary Geithner, is the prevention of this too big to fail scenario.
That's not missing. That's at the center of.
But do you think it's going to have enough teeth that it will absolutely prevent companies and banks from getting to the point where the government has to step in to bail them out?
The president's not going to sign a bill. It doesn't have strong enough teeth. Again, the key things financial reform has to do, it has to give consumers, families, and businesses basic protections against fraud and predation. People who want to buy a new home, send their kids to college, buy a car, borrow to finance a healthcare expenditure. We provide basic protections for them so they don't get taken advantage of.
Lies. So, first of all, circular logic on the president won't sign a bill that isn't great. So if he's willing to sign it, it must be great. Oh, okay. I feel much more sure.
He didn't say great, doesn't have teeth.
Doesn't have teeth. Okay, just on the specifics here, too big to fail. No, we've addressed that. No, you haven't. Here's how they addressed it, and here's where the devil's in the details. They say if a bank goes under, then we will collect money from all the other banks to provide in breaking up that bank. Okay, that is the world's worst plan. Okay, because if one of the banks goes under, they're so interconnected, just like happened last time. There's an excellent chance they're all going to go under. Then who are you going to collect the money from? And how does that help you with too big to fail? And breaking them up, if there's a domino effect, even if a giant one, just one of them, Citibank goes under, they're still too big. You say, oh, I'm going to break them up. How? How are you going to break them up? You still have the problem of they're dragging everybody down with them.
To an extent, you do. The truth is, I don't know the answer to that question. I'm not qualified to answer that question. But I do think that when they're putting together a structure for the rescue of a fallen bank, that they're doing it with some economic wisdom. I mean, I don't know.
And if that was the case, look, if they were willing to break up the banks, they say they were willing to break up the banks. Why didn't they just do it when it happened? Why didn't they break up Citibank
Well, that's
earlier?
exactly what I'm talking about. That's what they weren't prepared. I mean, that's the thing, and that goes to, yes, you're right about Bernanke and Geithner, but it's also that I don't know there's a person in the world who could have foreseen what was going to happen.
But they didn't have the political will then, and they still don't have the political will. They're not going to break up the big banks, and the way to pay for it is comical. After they go under, they say, give me the money. But that's the problem. They ran out of money.
That is not all that is part of this regulation, though. I mean, that's a
for
part
the too
of
big
it.
To
I mean,
fail.
The most important, that's right, for too big to fail. The most important is what he talked about when he talked about fraud and predation. And fraud, to me, fraud is whatever. Predation is what motivates so many of these banks and so many of these lenders and so many of the banks to one another as well. So if they can find a way to get rid of the predation, I think that's going to be a big selling point on this regulation. And then it will have teeth.
All right, let's do the last two clips real quick. Let's go to clip number 7, where he's going to talk about bonuses.
Let me go back to Wall Street for a second and these bonuses, which is such an emotional hot-button issue for people around the country. Michael Lewis, the author, said recently about the Wall Street bonuses, quote, he called them a very elegant form of theft. Do you agree with that?
What happened in our country should never happen again. People were paid for taking enormous risks. If those risks turned out well, they made a lot of money. If they turned out that they lost some money, they were not exposed to loss. It was a crazy way to run a financial system, and it helped contribute to the kind of excess risk-taking that you saw across across the country. And it's the government's job, this is a job for governments, to do a better job of constraining that kind of risk-taking.
You know, I see on YouTube sometimes people say that I do face palms, and I didn't realize I did it until, and in the middle of that clip I noticed, like as he was talking, I was like, it's a crazy way to run the system. You were running the system.
Okay, but there's something to be said for retrospect too. I mean, he was running a system,
but that's exactly my second problem. Okay, it's a crazy way to run the system, and you didn't change it. They're still taking those risks, and there's still no consequence.
Okay.
I mean, it's going to crater. It's going to crater. And when it does, one of the top culprits is the guy you're looking at. I think he's so bad at his job. He's Rumsfeldian. Okay, I think he is as bad at Treasury as Don Rumsfeld was at Defense, and there is no heavier insult.
And are you saying that because of his resume, because of his past, or are you saying it because of what he has done since he's gotten there?
Now, look. Certainly his past is enormously important because, like I've said over and over again, one of the principal guys responsible for what went wrong, right? But I can get beyond even that if he turned it around. But no, I'm saying predominantly for what he's not doing now when we desperately need that reform. Desperately. And I know, Michael,
and don't you think the chronology of it is just as important as the actual doing it? In other words, the rescue, the stimulus, the TARP, as a segue into the next phase of it, which is the regulation?
The chronology is another reason I blame him. Because after you give all the money to the banks and you say, hey, you can spend it on lobbyists, and today it was released that information that hedge funds have doubled the amount of money they're spending on lobbyists in the last quarter. Okay, doubled, right? After you do all that, then you say, pretty please, can you do some reform? Well, that is, at best, a really dumb way of doing reform. When you had the leverage is when you should have done reform. So I blame him for the chronology as well. And so final clip, clip number 8 here on the average guy versus the bankers.
And for somebody in Pittsburgh here who's struggling to make ends meet, and they find out that the banks can borrow money at 0%, and then the bank turns around and charges them 26% on their credit card, and they say, what's up with this?
This system was not good for consumers, for the average American, because you saw so many of them got taken advantage of, but it wasn't good for businesses either. You know, the key test of a financial system is, do we do a good job of taking the savings of Americans and using those savings to finance growing companies? That's the key test. And this system was not good for business because it was subject to these big booms and busts. They took a bunch of resources and put them into real estate rather than into productive companies, and that's why reforms are so important.
Okay, final point on Geithner. Why am I so obsessed with Geithner more than anyone else? Because there were dozens of people involved in this collapse. If you go to all the executives, thousands of people involved in this economic collapse, and the politicians, etc. Why Geithner more than anyone else? One, he's of course the most important person in financial reform now because he's the Treasury Secretary. But number two, it's actually because of the details. Every single time I read a news story on reform, Geithner is fighting it. So not all of the reform, but if someone wants to make reform tougher, if they want to have more regulation on the banks, they want to say, hey, let's limit leverage, let's limit risk, let's limit size. Every single time, Geithner's the guy to step up and go, no, don't do it, don't do it. It'll endanger the banks, it'll endanger the economy. No one is more responsible than Geithner for having those disparities. And so that's why I think he's the worst, one of the worst government officials of my lifetime.
Short of resigning and short of the hyperbole, what would you say Tim Geithner has to do to sort of allay how you feel right now about the system?
And there are so many things he can do. That's a great question, right? So you know me, I like to think I'm not an unreasonable guy. People might disagree, right? But if Geithner turned around at this very moment, despite all the terrible things, in my opinion, he's done, and said, hey, look, you know what? Of course, this is crazy that we can't see what derivatives they're trading. We should be able to see 100% of the derivatives. Complete transparency. They should be on a market. Furthermore, you shouldn't be able to bet on a derivative that you have no interest in. If you have an interest in the underlying asset, yes, you can insure it. But if you're just gambling, well, then you're endangering the economy based on your gambling, and we can't allow it. If he did that, I'd turn around on a dime. I'd be like, okay, he was a bad guy in the past, but you know what? That makes a lot of sense, and I'd support him. But he's not going to do that. He's not going to come within miles of doing that.
Okay, part two of that, because the first part makes all the sense in the world. Part two, what would you, I mean, where do you challenge free market by instituting it as you would do it, without, just sort of eliminating the betting on derivatives that way? Doesn't that challenge free market?
Oh, no, see, free markets, we've discussed this a lot in the past. In order for them, it's like a basketball game. In order for a basketball game to work, you can't just say, take out the refs, free market. Right? In order for the game to work, you need the refs. And in order for the free market to work, you need regulators, okay?
Right.
And one of the guys that told us that back in 1776 was Adam Smith. He said, look, in order for the free market to work, there will be natural monopolies. The government has to step in with natural monopolies, et cetera, and other conditions. We've known this from the beginning of our conception of capitalism, right?
Yeah.
So if I say, hey, look, you can do derivatives if you're selling corn and you're worried about the fluctuation in price, of course you can do a derivative to cover your basis, right? But if you're Joe in Cincinnati and Bob in Sacramento and you don't have the corn, you're not selling it, you're not insuring it, you're not doing anything with it, and you just like to make a bet on the corn, well, I'm not going to let you because that's going to ruin the game. Okay?
So just taking the side bets away.
Taking the side bets away is very, very, very important. Now, look, we don't have the time for it here, but I would lay out at least 4 fundamental reforms, which are all in the realm of regulation to make sure that we have fair competition and real free markets. Because the point isn't like, the right wing will tell you, oh, yeah, they hate capitalism, they're socialist, Maoists, et cetera. No, you got to protect capitalism. It is fundamentally the right system. If you don't have competition, it's not going to work, okay? People don't just work as hard as they can and take as little as they need. That's not how human nature works. Capitalism best addresses human nature. But part of human nature is that anyone will abuse the rules if you let them. You can't let them. That's why I'm more angry at Tim Geithner than I am at any of those bankers. Like the guy at AIG that sunk the whole ship and basically cost American taxpayers $182 billion. He made $600 million doing it. The guy that ran their London office.
Yeah, right.
Well, is he going to do that? Of course he's going to do that. I don't blame him. I blame Geithner for letting him do it.
Okay, I just think that your argument becomes much more salient, and I don't disagree with you. I mean, you said you were setting up as I was going to disagree with you on Geithner. I don't know as much as you do. You know an incredible amount about the details of this. But I think that the argument of going after Geithner before he became Treasury Secretary is less effective than going after the kind of reforms that he needs to put in place. It's why I asked you what he could do, because I think that is the most important part. He is the Treasury Secretary
It's
now.
obvious from his actions that he is never going to change his mind.
Well, I mean, it might not be up to him and only him to change his mind either. I mean,
here's how I would change his mind: give him a new job.
Well, that's why I said short of saying resigning and short of getting rid of him and the hyperbole, then what would the answer be? But really, I mean, that's what I feel is that the way to address Tim Geithner and frustrations with Tim Geithner is what he's doing to change it, not what he didn't do to change it immediately, but what he's not doing right now to change it.
And I wish he would. I wish he would do that change. If he listened to us now, but not me. Listen to Simon Johnson. Listen to Joseph Stiglitz. Listen to the smartest economists in the world. They're actually fairly unanimous in regards to those reforms, which they're not doing. All right, quick break, and then a conservative argues that homosexuals are all pedophiles. Should be fun. Young Turks. Sign up for membership on theyoungturks.com and get the whole 3-hour show plus an uncensored postgame.